I will tell you a little bit about the podcast. Basically, the Generalist is where I interview people who know a little bit about a lot. That's the premise of it. But the theme of the podcast is to... So, for example, you're an artist, right? You work hard to get your portfolio. And once you get to that level of having like a nice portfolio, everybody sees you as this like, talented, skilled person. What I try to cover in the podcast is the story to what happened to get to that level, right? Because I feel like it's talked a lot about, in the media or whatever, about, perfect things, like things that look great, things that look pretty, but like the process to get to like your real must have been like quite quite a journey. And I think that is not as covered as I would have, as people would have loved it to be, because like when the first thing you think when you want to learn a new skill is like, I'm not talented enough. I'm not as talented as that person. And the truth is there's no difference. There's just no difference between me and you, between any other people. And it's only the journey that matters most. So I wanted to ask you, what do you think about that?
About how I like the concept of talking about the story and stuff?
Yeah, like how do you feel about these things not being talked about as much?
I think it shows a good indicator in making people feel more relatable, especially upcoming artists, where you're definitely right, where when somebody sees someone who has great work and sees the output that they've put on a professional level, or even as just someone who's a hobbyist, that's really good. You don't think about the struggles and difficulties they went through trying to achieve that. You just see the end result and you compare that end result to where you are now, saying, man, they're really good. I'm nowhere near that good. And that's the end of the conversation and thought process right there. Versus the struggles that person went through to achieve that makes it more relatable to the new upcoming artists, that they didn't start out much different than I did. They also were still learning, struggling to grasp concepts, struggling to get things that even that could be considered simple to some people. We all went through the same steps. We all went through the same struggles, and it helps relate that to those new artists that this is an achievable level for them.
Yeah, absolutely. That's how I feel too. So I would like to focus on that a little bit because, we're seeing your reel, it's right there. It's looking pretty well. It's pretty well made.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask you, like, what took you, the sweat, tears, and blood, like describe to me from the moment you started learning Unreal all the way to where you are now, right now.
The thing that was the hardest to learn?
Yeah.
That's a good question. If I were to think back on the hardest things for me to learn that were difficult.
Well, basically you could just start with, I could help you out a little bit. So what I would like to hear from you is like your journey in the beginning. Like what you must have seen something that inspired you and you were like, oh, I would like to do that. And you started with like simple things, right? And just walk us through your journey a little bit too.
So when I guess the first thing that got me interested in it is when I was young, I was obsessed with this game called State of Decay. I think it's fairly big now, but when the original came out, did it just go out again?
Oh, I can hear you. I can hear it. Don't worry.
Okay, sweet.
Yeah.
I was making sure my internet was working again. Okay, so
Traumatized.
it started when I was yeah. I'm so scared it's gonna go out again. But it looks like things are working. Yeah, it's working. Okay. Oh, so much anxiety now.
Yeah, no, don't worry about it.
Well, when I was a kid, I joined this big like modding group for State of Decay, and I used to something about going into the files of the game and modding and creating my own like version of the game. I modded it so heavily to the point where I created my own game mode in it, where it was called State of Decay Lone Wolf, right? Okay. And it became one of the more popular mods for the game. Yeah. And it had everything from like a custom title screen to custom music. Not that I made, I kind of ripped it off the internet, so it wasn't exactly the best method of doing it, but people appreciated it. Custom characters, all that, and custom difficulty curves and style of gameplay. So I got really in depth into it, and it sparked this feeling of creation. The idea of like taking something and creating and making it your own made me really happy, and that's what got me interested in that. First, it was I wanted to become a game designer, and I think everyone in high school had that feeling where I want to become a game designer, I want to be a game developer. And it was a general umbrella term for a lot of things. Like there were modelers, animators, VFX artists, programmers.
Yeah.
And being ignorant on that, I think I called it just game designer. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, but it was something related to games and media. Mm-hmm. So after I exited high school, I kind of doubted and thought that maybe that was just a high school fad or something. And I tried other avenues. I got into marketing. Mm-hmm. I got into some website creation for people and all that. Mm-hmm. But I always found myself going back and being interested in the creative field. And then Unreal 5 came out. And I got all the trailers for Unreal 5. Mm-hmm. I saw people working in it, some of the creations people made. And it was new and fresh to the market. And I got infatuated with this idea of like creating and using it. It reminded me of like a game back when I was a kid called Spore, where you would create these creatures and create these worlds and design all the buildings and cars and creatures to use in this world. And to me, Unreal kind of came off similar to me, where it's a big sandbox that you program, create, design the models, assets, and put it all together and create something with. So I followed, and I think everybody's familiar with this YouTuber that is interested in Unreal, but Unreal Sensei and his 5-hour introduction into Unreal.
All right.
That's what I did. They taught learning the rendering, getting used to mega scans. And it was a great 5-hour video that teaches you the basics of just getting familiar with the layout, the UI, and getting used to having the engine open and working in it. And I dabbled in it for a period of time, creating some like worlds using the knowledge he taught, but I didn't know where to go after that. I got the general knowledge of how to use the engine for little things and just create things using mega scans, but where do I go from here? Mm-hmm. And that's where I kept looking into what do I need, or what are my requirements for me to learn this program if I'm dedicated. I learned what virtual production was shortly after by seeing posts from The Mandalorian and everything. Yeah. So then I kept looking into schools because I told myself I have a hard time learning something new and being on track with that.
All right.
I need to be held accountable for my work, and I need to be held accountable to a schedule for me to properly learn. And that's how I learn best. I struggle sometimes with I need somebody to be like, all right, you need to turn this in by the end of the week. Yep. And then I feel that pressure. Yep. I'm like, okay, now somebody's relying on me. So now I have to. Yeah. So that's what I did. Yeah. And I was looking into all these schools. I looked at ThinkBox. I looked at what's the school? I think it's called Nomo or
Gnomon.
It's like the one that starts with a G.
Gnomon, Noda?
Nope.
Gnomon.
Yeah. Yes. I looked into that and looked at some of the individual courses that they had. Yeah. But the thing that I was really focusing on my learning journey was trying to find a school that was an authorized Unreal teacher, because I wanted somewhere and gave them an award saying this is the type of course that we approve of. Yep. Something that had a credit from Epic, and CG Spectrum had that. So I joined CG Spectrum using one of the introductory courses, and they had 2 courses for the virtual production, or 2 ways you can learn the Unreal through virtual production and stuff. And one of them was just learning the engine itself and bringing assets in and teaching you the basics of camera work and doing some minor tech animation work. Yeah. Or you could take a prerequisite class that taught you the foundations of modeling and animation, and then the last course included that last Unreal session. Yeah. And I took that knowing that I wanted to do cinematic art and work in Unreal, because to me, it seems more valuable having the knowledge of learning the foundation of animation, having general knowledge of animation, learning the foundations of modeling and the foundations of, or the essentials for modeling. So that way, if I had an idea for a film, I could create my own assets, create my own animations.
Mm-hmm.
So
a generalist approach, basically.
Course. Yeah, more of a generalist approach, because you never know, like, even if you work in a studio and you have dedicated modelers, animators, sometimes you just need, from a previous standpoint, something quick just to get the concept across. So having general knowledge on how to do that gets rid of that middleman, makes it where you can do it all quickly, maybe not to a professional level, but enough to get that previs going. Now, I would like to keep practicing, pushing that animation to get to a professional level.
Yep.
But I finished that course, and it was, I would say, it gave you a nice arsenal of information between modeling, animation, and then they also taught you motion capture cleanup, working with control rigs and everything in Unreal, and how to render sequences out.
Yeah.
And from there, I went on this big self-learning journey of just learning things based on the projects I'm working on. Like for this Dead Space project, I had a small minor Dead Space scene that I built just to see if it was possible for me to even get or build scenery in the same style that Dead Space had. And it required me to learn about the artistic style Dead Space had, even though it is I would say, realistic game in terms of its art. It did have a style with parts of the ship and machinery having a focus on ridges and having repeating lines of ridges. And that was shown in Isaac Clarke's suit. That was shown in the way the panels were designed in the ship. That was shown in the way the machinery and tools used in the game. There was a big focus on ridges and stuff, and taught me about that even realistic games had style approach to them.
Of course.
It also taught me that how to do things like holograms and stuff. So I took time to learn holograms and learn a little bit of Niagara for some visual effects like smoke and mist. So that carried me through there. And then I decided, well, to really show my showcase, I should create a actual short film.
All right.
And I met some people along the way that helped me a lot.
Cool. Where did you meet these people? In the school or outside?
A lot were from the school.
Yeah.
One of the greatest ones I learned was a really close friend of mine named Heather. She lives in the UK.
Shout
And
out.
that's a cool thing about the school is there's lots of people from all over the world taking it. So you become friends if you're talkative. My issue is I talk like crazy in the chats and stuff. So I inevitably meet people who also like talking and match my vibe and everything.
Cool.
And me and Heather became friends through the school, and we decided to work on a collab together, which was that Tokolosh render we did where it had, I think it was Remenstein, the song Remenstein. I think the band is called Remenstein, but the name of the song. Yes.
Yeah.
And I don't. Yeah. So she made the model and everything. I created the render in Unreal for it, and she worked her butt off to get that model looking good and everything. And I did the other part, which is, okay, I'm the visual side. I will make the lights on the barbs, actual flames and stuff, get the eyes glowing like we want, get the hair moving. So that's how, and we were working on another render now for another model she makes. And our dynamic is basically she makes the models and I bring the models to life. If I want to rig them, if we want to make the hair flow, if we want to add wind effects, if we want to create an environment, I'm the man for that. I get the camera settings right.
Yeah.
I set the layout and she creates any details that I may need for it. And we found that works very well for her. And she's actually creating a model for something that's going to be in my Dead Space short film that's going to be towards the end.
Yeah.
So, and I'm excited to see her work. And she's excited because she usually does stylized work and she's focusing on more realistic, grotesque, gruesome work, which is good because she likes more grotesque, gross things. And I'm in that same ballpark. I think the grossness is cool and freaky stuff's cool.
Yeah.
So I think us working together on that is kind of hits both of our desires. and we're excited to see where it goes.
That's awesome, man.
Other
That's really good to hear. Yeah, go ahead.
other people I met, and this person I cannot describe how much they've helped me, is I post my stuff on Unreal groups and stuff.
All right.
And this one person messaged me, and his name's Nate. And he messaged me saying that he was an indie filmmaker back in his day. He's no longer doing it, but he did won a couple awards for indie filmmaking.
Cool.
He did a lot of small projects with friends and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and he competed in film competitions. So he had a background in, indie filmmaking and everything, and
Yep.
knew the concepts and the workflows for that. So he helped me understand the workflow to actually make this short film work. Because
Alright.
the biggest problem I ran into was I would make scenes based on what I had in my mind, created them all in Unreal, and then once I saw the layout, and I spent hours making these shots in sequence, I find out that this doesn't make sense from a story standpoint. This sequence doesn't really flow together well.
Mm-hmm.
And so he taught me the importance of screenplay, script writing, and learning about the workflows, that how before you even start filming, you have something to film towards. So he taught me the workflow of creating a working script, creating a screenplay or
Mhm.
a block out
Mhm.
on a piece of paper for me to mimic in Unreal using a cine camera.
Okay.
And also learning about general filmmaking terms and how shots work together, like the 180 rule, how different shots have different effects on the emotions the audience might feel. This stuff was also learned a lot through me in spending a lot of time looking not into just Unreal specific videos, but also indie filmmaking and filmmaking techniques. Because for virtual production, or for you want to become a cinematic 3D artist, we're just taking that same knowledge and applying it into a 3D workspace rather than a real life production workspace. So you take the same concepts and the same ideas behind your techniques and just do them in a 3D scene.
Do you think that his perspective, Nate's perspective, basically was helpful because, there are two different worlds. You have the real world where you have limits, right? The time of the day or the type of lights or your equipment. And then you have Unreal where you could render 8K 120 FPS and you can have an alien just show up and then a cartoony character next to it, and all type of effects. Do you think that his perspective was helpful to not only limit you but also appreciate the limitless aspect of Unreal, the flexibility, basically?
Yes, that's actually why he was in the same developer workspace. Is he was an indie filmmaker and he had ideas for films, but he wanted to get into Unreal to make his ideas come to life as well.
Mm-hmm.
So he showed me a couple of his script and screenplay works that he started working on in a real life production. Never finished it, but how that could easily convey into using cine cameras and make the same production even better in Unreal, because you don't have those limitations of time of day or trying to organize everybody to show up at the same time.
Oh yeah,
you can use external actors like MetaHuman or your own custom models to get your actors, and all you need is just hire some voice actors whenever they're available to do the voice acting that you need.
Yeah.
So it definitely gets rid of a lot of difficulties for production, as long as you're okay with it being a CG project versus a real life production.
Yeah, I can see that. And also you need to be okay with the learning curve because, in reality, you could just, if you have the capacity and the budget to bring all those people together, like 500 people in one set to get the lights done, the layout done, etc., then you don't have this learning curve to go through. But if you're willing to put the time and I must say, it's a lot of learning curve. Like, it's a huge learning curve, right? Like,
it is.
Tell us, please, like a little bit about that learning curve. So a lot of people come to it and they're like, I want to make movies. Oh, this Unreal thing is amazing. And it's like, yes, it is amazing, but like the amount of technical stuff that you have to go through first in order to make a simple scene of 30 seconds is incredible. It could take you a year or two. How was it for you?
Oh, man, there's a lot that goes into it. I think a big thing that is easy to, or a big thing that's kind of a slippery slope for me that I took learning is when you're doing previs or wanting to create an animation, a lot of people recommend using what is it called, Mixamo for your animation preset for animations.
Yeah,
and you come into this problem where the more you want to do with the project, the less you have access in Mixamo. Like the animations, they only have so many. They're great animations, but you run into the problem of not finding the things you need, not finding the proper style of animation you need. Like maybe you're going something from more stylistic, maybe you're going for something hyper realistic, and it's just not cutting it for you anymore. And that's when you cross that barrier where, okay, I'm going to need to either learn how to take motion capture or learn how to animate. And honestly, for motion capture, you need to learn how to animate in order to know how to clean up animation, motion capture to make it look good. So having a prerequisite of knowing how to do motion capture, how to apply that motion capture in Unreal, how to set up a control rig so you can even set it up between different assets, it works too. Even for my demands, like my creature, the necromorph there, it is taken from a mod from in-game, but we know I have to make a custom control rig for it. How do I do that? I need to know how to make a control rig. Oh, the arms that are fleshy don't have bones and they kind of flail. So now I need to know how to make procedural animation. And CG Spectrum taught procedural coded animation. It's a lot of fun, by the way. Control rig procedural animation. It's so cool watching it go from something you have to physically control to something that is controlled on its own base, that's taking inertia into consideration. So the more you demand from a project, I've noticed, the more you realize that you're going to have to learn. And I think you get to choose your own battles in that as well. Like when I'm making my scenes in the script, I'm also taking consideration what is going to be required of me to learn to make that shot. One of the shots that requires is our character is going to have a communicator on her arm that has holographic, just like in the games, that will be able to communicate between her and other people in the ship. One of the prerequisites I'm going to need to do that is how to make materials for holograms. First of all, if you didn't know how to do that, you need to know how to make a hologram. Second is how to make those materials flow and look like they're an actual video feed going through. So then I tackle, is this something that is possible, first of all, in Unreal? And second, am I up for the task?
Yeah.
So I came to the conclusion that yes, I am up for the task for those two things. And there are other things as well, that when you make a shot or a script shot, you have to think about how long is that scene going to take to model? Can I get away with assets? So I think the learning curve all depends on what you're willing to put yourself through.
Yeah.
And from what you demand from your project you're working on.
Like,
and one of the things go on.
We have a question for the audience. I'm going to go back to that in a second. But like, it also depends on the type of education you're getting, because I think you walked over CG Spectrum a little bit, but I think what you're not mentioning is like what type of education CG Spectrum actually offers you. Those weekly homeworks with the mentor sitting down, and then you get a weekly feedback from that mentor all the way until you're done with that foundation course, which is about 3 to 4 months, if I remember correctly. And plus you can take all of that, not only this part of it, but also getting to know people in the field, the technical assistants that could help you along the way. This is a very safe environment to learn from. CG Spectrum, I think, is one of the best places to learn from. If you can afford it, that's it. It's like one of the best places to learn from. But I think, like you said, there's the battles that you could choose to fight, but fight them alone, I don't think that's possible as much as people think. You're either going to get overwhelmed or you're really stubborn-headed and you're strong enough, and you have your own community that you could ask around, and you could create your own, get around and ask. But you can only get as much as you can go with that. If you're in your case, you attend SG Spectrum and you've got a lot from that. I want to end this here. I want to go back to the question from the audience so they're not bored.
Yes.
Question from Sprava from Poland. Do you think Unreal will be used for final renders in film eventually, or it will stay more like a previs option and game cinematics?
So I know there's a couple indie films right now, or indie animations that have used Unreal for its final renders. There's this YouTube indie animation called Murder Drones. They made their animations in Maya, but they imported it all into Unreal and did the final renders in Unreal. And it's became a very popular indie animation created by Glitch Productions. It actually was, I didn't even think it was made in Unreal when I saw it. Now it is stylistic and cartoony, but it also shows a good, example of the type of work that could come out with a dedicated team. There is also another film that I think recently has gotten very popular. I think it's something about robots, something like, let me see real quick online.
You mean Death Love Robots?
Yes, Death Love Robots.
Yeah.
I believe that was rendered in Unreal.
Are you sure? Are you
and
100% sure?
The final output.
All
I'm not entirely sure.
Okay, let's only say things that we're totally sure about. Maybe the chat can look that up. We're not experts on this, but I know that there was a lot of stuff used. Like there was a usage of a lot of different programs other than Unreal. We could look it up. It's not a big deal. But yeah. It's being used more, and I think the attractiveness of it is the flexibility of being able to change the shot on the go. I think that's what basically gets a lot of directors right now think it's actually quite attractive option. But yeah, it has its own limitation. Like you ain't gonna get the same render quality, the outcome, and everything else unless like you really have a dedicated team that. It could get you far, but I feel like real time. I mean, it could still do renders, right? Like a normal render engine can do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk us a little bit through
path
that?
Tracing.
Yeah.
So it can still do path tracing and stuff, but the path tracing has its own hurdles, and some materials that would work with Lumen won't work or show up properly with the path tracing. Okay. I've had a couple of that issues with. Heather and I made our Tokolos render. I wanted to render it with path tracing, but we came across some problems like the skin material wasn't showing up properly, or the hair material needed adjustments for path tracing. We found it easier just to continue using Lumen. And Lumen can get you pretty far and close to path tracing, but I think you're right, where even between path tracer and using the real-time Lumen render in Unreal, you're not going to get the same quality if you were to use it in a dedicated render like Arnold or Cycles in Blender. But I think the argument for Unreal is being able to work on those scenes in real time, work on your lighting in real time, work on your assets in real time, and not waiting for a render to make your adjustment.
Yeah, absolutely.
If Unreal could invest longer or more into an offline render approach, or maybe having a more dedicated offline render, I could see it becoming more, but I think for now it's still not putting a fighting stance into a final animation output.
Yeah, but I could see it working for certain projects, like with certain style. But yeah, we have Sprava saying I googled and I found that it was one episode of Love, Death and Robots. So one of them was rendered in Unreal. In fact, no info about other. I think they hired different people, but I'm not sure about that either. But like each episode looked very, very, very different from the other. There was even like some 2D animation stuff going on. But like the tools vary. Like there are tools for everything. But it's like you said, like what's his name? Nate was able to give you advice on your film because he was still able to see a film as a film regardless of the tool, and I think that is super valuable. Like if you have that skill to see films as a medium, and you can do it with anything, even with paper, like South Park when they first started. Am I right? Like these guys, they made something incredible with like just like papers and scissors and like other material. So we talked a little bit about like the different aspects, but I think it's a little bit hard to understand like the amount of skills. Like you went into this foundation course from CG Spectrum. That means you went through modeling, you went through animation, probably took that for a couple of months, and then went into Unreal. How was it when you got to the Unreal part finally? Like, did you feel like, oh, finally I can spread my wings, or did you feel, oh my God, this is too complex?
I felt like I could spread my wings. I think that was just the little boy inside of me excited to finally open up the program and explore it. I kind of jumped for joy whenever the lessons taught me about stuff. I would go spend, it was 20 hours a week that was on average how much you would spend. But I think I was spending a lot more in there just messing around and having fun and enjoying, seeing what I could do. And I think it is easy there were points where I did get overwhelmed trying to do some things, especially when it came to the materials and learning there's lots of material nodes.
Of course.
It's hard to know which ones you need to use and what every single one does. So that's where YouTube resources came. Like if I needed to know about a certain node or achieve a certain effect, I would source YouTube videos to try and find like an explanation for this specific node, or go to Unreal pages to explain the node, or even better, I'd ask my mentor themselves and they would give me an answer. And I think that's something CG Spectrum cannot be undermined on, or cannot be, what's the word? Underrepresented on.
And also, I don't feel like there's a lot of competition there. Like I think what they offer is very unique. Like obviously we both are students. We've both been there, and what they offer is just like something that you can't. I feel like it's so unique in its own, and there's no competition. Yeah,
I think the biggest difference is that it allows you to not make bad habits that you have. There are lots of bad habits that I had when modeling and animation that when my mentor saw, who is an industry professional, has been doing it for years and works professionally for studios, pointed out and corrected me on, and not only corrected me on them, but told me why and what your employer would expect and what would work best for the team. So having somebody with experience working on that team, working with employers, working with studios, and teaching you the proper methods with working those studios, I think is very, very powerful. There are I was guilty of it, and I know others that were guilty of it, but like animation itself is hard to do if you don't have somebody teaching you the proper steps into doing animation. Like one thing that I see is beginners will try and do a very complex animation as somebody who hasn't even learned the 12 principles of animation or the foundations of a walk cycle. And one thing my mentor taught me that sticks to my head that I always notice is you can tell when someone hasn't learned the proper foundations for animations, because it doesn't matter how complex your animation is, you'll see something lacking or some principle of it missing. And he told me, focus on those 12 principles, focus on the foundations, and then go to more complex things.
And by the way, like,
because no matter how complex,
just focus on the 12 principles, just on the 12 principles. Animation is so demanding. Oh my God.
It is very demanding. It's hard to learn. Animation it seems fun. It is fun. It seems easy and fun from an outside perspective. Like, oh yeah, I'll just make my characters move. There's so much into it that I think people don't realize. Like when I would explain it to my modeler friends in the school, it's so different. Because I did both the modeling class and animation class for the foundation, I got introduced to both groups of people. Yeah. The modelers are a lot more calm and like more methodical, and the animation people are more explosive in personality, which makes sense. They're animators, they're weirdos. Every animator is a weirdo. I think that's how we become animators.
Yes, exactly. But like I think me and you, we can connect on so many levels because I've attended the exact same course you attended, and this had sculpted a lot of our journey going forward. Like I feel like you can relate, or when you hear the word generalists, you can relate to that, right? Because I feel like me and you have the same foundation, and like you said, when you have such a good course as a start, eliminate your bad habits. Till this day, I notice myself knowing things from back then. I'm like, yeah, I know that. Like, and like I talked to a person who's like a bit more advanced, like, oh, how the heck do you know that? You know, like, I know it. I do. I got taught well, I guess. But like, you don't notice there's a saying, you don't know what you don't know, but you also don't know what you already know that is good. Until you meet like people with bad habits, or, I mean, I'm not saying like I know it all, but it definitely was a good start, and it's good to see that you also feel the same about this. But it's cool as well that you can't just say I'm an animator, right? I guess that's something you not struggle with, but
it's hard to, when someone asks what I do, I'm like, well,
it's hard to do it without sounding like a scammer. Like, oh yeah, totally. I could do a movie, and I could do the rigging, and like everybody's like, and can you do a website? Sure, let's do it. You know what I mean?
I don't think I can do a website anymore. That was so long ago when I learned how to. I get people where people in my real life world, they'll ask, like, I see you do all those things online. Can you make me a website? I'm like, no, they're not the same thing, but I used to know how to do that. Not anymore.
Yeah, man. But it's really cool that we have the same background. And I could see, like, we both went, like, you went on your way to become, like, eventually a technical assistant in CG Spectrum, right? So you get to solve different problems, get to learn even more, expand on your knowledge. But because you have this base, like really good base and really good foundation, and the support from mentors behind you, you'll be able to do your job easily. How do you like to being a technical assistant so far?
It's a lot of fun. I love talking to the students, and I help with the SDA, which is a Saudi Arabia school that CK Spectrum partner with.
Yep.
And so they teach them real time and game development. So while I can't help much with the game kit because I didn't take the game developer course or the programming course for it, I am able to help with general knowledge in Unreal or with Maya, which here comes that modeling knowledge and animation knowledge. When they are in modeling in Maya and they have difficulties, I can help them with issues like having the biggest issue that I think everybody runs into is having soft select on. And it causes so many issues, especially for me when I was learning. You see the yellow dots everywhere and you don't know what they mean and nothing's working. And you realize, oh, I pressed B. So that is common. That happens a lot. But all the students are super passionate and super, like, they have this joy in them to learning new things, and being filled, surrounded with that energy helps fuel me even more to want to do my own projects. But it also helps me get real happy helping them and seeing their messages like light up when you fix a problem for them and they can continue going forward, because nobody likes being stumped. Nobody likes feeling like they're making progress and being stuck on something.
I mean,
you feel like the world got you in a chokehold.
My viewers love that, though. Like when I do the stream, and I do Let's Learns, and they are similar to Let's Plays, right? So you see me learning something new, attending a course, and my viewers just love it when I'm stuck because I just get super frustrated. You know what I mean? They're like, "Oh, here comes the fun." Oh yeah, Jack is frustrated.
It is.
So yeah, there are people who like you being stumped.
It is kind of fun being stuck in that. All right, it's time to lock in and problem solve now. Let's break this down. Let's try and see what we can solve. My biggest problem I came across in my short film journey that I recently solved, that took me ages to solve, with MetaHuman, is I kept having this issue in the editor where I would play my scene a little bit. I would pause, move the cursor a little bit, or the scrubber. And my MetaHuman head would freak out and the neck would elongate and be like 2 feet above the character. And she has this stretchy neck and none of the animations worked. I tried tackling this and trying to find a cause for this for months before I decided, I'm just going to keep going and try and like keep producing and try and fix this problem later. Don't do that, by the way. That's not a good method to do. But if you have something like you want to work on lighting or something, sure, I found out I had this anamorphic lens pack that was never installed properly. So Unreal was trying to use this lens pack for the camera, but it was glitching because it wasn't direct. It wasn't pathed correctly to it. So I think what happened is MetaHuman was trying to calculate for inertia on the hair, but because the framing kept changing and glitching, it gave up and decided, you know what, we're just going to put the head all the way up here.
Wow.
And it would, yeah. And I re-downloaded this anamorphic lens pack, installed it properly, pathed it properly, and got everything installed correctly, and made a copy of my project naturally, because you don't want to mess everything up, especially you worked on something for a long time. And I no longer ran into that issue. I haven't ran into that issue for months, and it's not something you would think would be the cause. I went everywhere from animation blueprints, trying to reposition the head, trying to find new methods of attaching the head to this body for MetaHuman, seeing if maybe it had something to do with baking to control rig. Maybe I had to bake and manually set the head, but no, that didn't fix the issue.
Yeah.
And sometimes you don't really, it's so strange to me that an external lens pack could affect MetaHuman like that. Like, you would think the first place to look would be in the blueprint building, like how you have components attached to each other. No, it was just a camera lens that wasn't installed properly that affected the way the camera, I want to say MetaHuman, calculated for inertia, and just gave up halfway through and sent the head where maybe it didn't need to calculate inertia anymore because the neck was all messed up. So
it's so interesting. It's like
it was.
If there's a solution where you don't have to install any add-ons and any other programs and any other whatever, that would be ultimate, right? Just have your whole movie done in one program and just call it a day. This is where the Blender users will lose their brain now. Like, I do everything in Blender. I do every single thing in Blender. So, talking about filmmaking, have you ever encountered people who make a whole movie in Blender, and what do you think about that?
Oh, I have a couple friends on Instagram. That's another thing. Instagram combining with artists and stuff. There's this one. Her name is Charlotte. She's making a short film in Blender, and I've seen other people because she has like, I think 20,000 followers or something. So She also posts work from all kinds of other artists and stuff. And me and her met through our filmmaking knowledge and stuff. So she has been working in Blender, doing everything from the modeling, animation, lighting, same thing I'd be doing in Unreal, but just using a different engine. But it's awesome seeing the progress she's making in her project, and seeing where she also streams herself working on these projects, but also seeing the artists that she posts who work and do their same filmmaking in Blender as well. And I think it's all the concepts are the same. It's just what workspace do you choose to work in.
So the reason I brought it up, because when you hear her talking or watch her stream, do you feel like there are some knowledge there that you know exactly how to fix? Just your, it's a whole different program, because the principle is the same. It should be the same principle. The tool is different, right? So have you ever encountered something like that?
I'm not too familiar with Blender, so I haven't. As far as filmmaking, there has been some things where she would like want to achieve something in her film, and I would know how to do it in Unreal. Like, she wanted to do an animation sequence and wanted to import it from Unreal into Blender, which is an interesting workflow. You would think the opposite.
Yeah, absolutely.
But because she knew how to she knew that I knew how to do animation Unreal, so I walked her through some processes that how I use MetaHuman, and then she would bring it into Blender and stuff. I helped her get over that hurdle, and I think she ultimately decided to stay in Blender. I think animating Unreal was its own learning curve, and if she decided she wanted to keep it all in Blender anyway because she was already working there, she just felt like having to import back and forth. She would rather just learn it in Blender. I'm like, hey, that works out too. Blender is more of a dedicated tool for animation, I would say, anyways, because Unreal still have his baby feet in animation, everything.
Yeah.
But other things like having shots that she would like to achieve, that I would hear talk about in stream. I never personally helped her with it, but talking about certain shots or moods she would like to achieve, I could see from the same filmmaking standpoint how one would achieve that mood or feeling based on the knowledge of how real life productions would try and achieve that same film project. So
okay, man. So we reached the time. Unfortunately, I would love to talk more. I will leave it with that. You can take the person out of Blender, but you can't take the Blender out of the person.
Yes,
I
think that's very true.
What a way to end it. Listen, I really enjoyed it. Let's do this again. And all the people you mentioned, if you could send them over, I would love to talk to them as well on a different episode. Just, hook me up. I'll talk to them. I'll invite them over. Awesome stuff you're doing, man. I would love to talk about it more, but that's all the time we have for today. I have one last question for you. How to spell your name right?
Efrain? Like how to say it or how to spell it?
How to say it in the most accurate way.
So it's Efrain. So I like to say like F, like the letter F, and then Efrain after there. Like
Efrain. What is the origin of the name? Do you know?
So it is originally I think it's Hispanic in origin, and I forgot what it means. I never followed up with that, but it is Hispanic in origin.
Yeah.
But I think some origins of it is Spain, which is Hispanic anyways. But it's in Honduras. It's pronounced like Efrain. But my whole life I just pronounce it Efrain, which is the more American pronunciation for it. Some people would say Efrain because it has rain in there, and I changed my Instagram handle to Rain on it because I thought, hey, Rain sounds cool, being named Rain. But Efrain's the most accurate and most like general pronunciation on it. Some people will say Efron, like Zac Efron or something. I'm like, I mean, it's not like that because Efron is Efron, but it's interesting name.
It's very interesting. I mean, it's very close to an Arabic name, Efran, but I'm not sure if it has any origin with that. I've been looking at it. It's like some Hebrew. Also, there's some Hebrew origin there as well. But names equals history. Listen, Efrain, it's been great having you. I will have to go now, and we'll catch up.
Thank you, Jack.
Absolutely. All right. Have a good one, man.